What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lasser Cast, and I am super excited for yet another author interview. Tonight we have Wile E Young and his wife Emily, and they are here to talk about their book, Dust Bowl Children. Welcome to the show, guys. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
I got the info about your book, Dust Bowl Children, and then I also took out MAGPIE Coffin on Audible. And I friggin' love that. And I love Dust Bowl Children. So now I'm like super pumped to talk to both of y'all.
Sweet.
Yeah. So this is like y'all's first time collaborating with each other for a novel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've collaborated before with Stephen Kostanski.
Kostanski.
No, Kostanski.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kostanski, he's that guy that did what do you call it? Psycho Goreman.
Oh, right.
I get their names mixed up anyway.
Fantastic movie.
Yeah. So anyway, working with Stephen and your wife, like, what's it like collaborating with someone else and just working as a team on a book?
Well, for me, the best thing about it is it's two different styles of doing things, because Kaz and I are a little bit more, he has this idea, I counter with this idea. We develop the story together, and then we are able to kind of tell each other things like, this will work, this doesn't work. While in our collaboration, we develop the story together, we come up with these ideas, and then she tells me what doesn't work, and we go with that.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, and I'm assuming that you guys like kind of took turns with who wrote which perspective, right? Like, did you write Cal's perspective, and then Emily, did you write Abby's perspective? Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So, what spurred you guys to write this book together? Like, did you have the idea for the story first, and you're like, hey, we should collaborate on this, or was it like we should work on a story together, and then you came up with this idea?
You want to go?
Now you go.
Okay. So we were actually on our honeymoon 4 years ago. And that was when Brian Keene was having the second annual Brian Keene Horror Show Telethon. And she graciously told me we could go if we wanted to. I'm like, no, it's our honeymoon. We shouldn't divert time to go hang out with all my friends. So we were listening to it in the car on the way back from our honeymoon. And she could tell I was kind of bummed for not being there. And she's like, well, let's do something fun. Why don't you pitch me a story, and we'll talk about it. We'll come up with a book idea together. And it just kind of spiraled out from there. And
oh man, that's cool.
And now it's developed this like process that we have that is a really fun way to like come up with a book together, I guess.
Yeah. Do you guys have like other projects in the pipeline that you've worked on together too?
Well, we're working on one very, very slowly.
Yeah. Well, so like working together as a team, does that like extend the writing process in general? Like, Wiley, when you work on a book, did you kind of fly through one, and then as a team, does it go slower?
No. See, the thing is, M's always been kind of my teammate on anything I write, because she's my editor. So,
oh, nice.
And she tells me what's what. So,
yeah. So Emily, as his editor, are you like really knowledgeable about like history and like Western history and things like that?
No, not like he is, for sure. But I am very critical, whether he likes it or not.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, that's one of my favorite things about Dust Bowl Children, and then also MAGPIE Coffin, is just like the world, like you feel like you're in that world. And like, I live in Texas now. I say y'all and stuff like that. I've been here for a while, but I'm from New York originally, right? And I'm like very removed from that kind of Western sensibility and that old time sensibility. But I think you really capture that in this book.
Thanks.
And so like, yeah. And so like, do you guys have a lot of like experience? Just like, did you grow up with like, kind of elder relatives that knew a lot about the past and like kind of had a rustic lifestyle? Did you do a lot of research?
I was a history major in college, so
he has
that
a history degree.
So that's my whole thing. And I specialized in Old West, and up until about the Great Depression, so it comes pretty naturally, and amongst other things. But pretty knowledgeable in all. I'm always reading some sort of history trivia, book, something like that. And so I love historical horror because, it's almost like fantasy at this point. It's a whole other world that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
And you get to work without some of the limitations that modern day horror gives you. Like, I don't have to worry about a cell phone in the Old West.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
But the
Go ahead.
challenges of it, like you said, are like, or like I'll be writing it and I'll have to like pause and look up when were towels invented.
Right. Yeah. Well, when you're writing as these characters, right, do you feel like you have to like put yourself in their shoes and kind of think like this is a totally different perspective, and like they just have different concerns and different, like, because like when the book starts out and you're talking like through Cal's perspective or Abby's perspective, you see a lot about their mother and just the way that she raised them, right? And it just seems so like it's almost like a different world, like you said, from the world that we live in now. And it's like they have like a whole different set of priorities. And did you find like you're just kind of editing out dialogue and stuff that you think they wouldn't even be caring about?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It was mostly getting the tone right, and making sure that the goals we had for them came across in their text, and that, like, for example, that Cal's kind of a rough character and that he doesn't come across as unsympathetic kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of unsympathetic characters, like going over to the MAGPIE Coffin, right? And talking about Salem Covington, he's a pretty despicable character in that book. And yet, I just wanted to follow his adventures. Like, are there any other Salem Covington books that are in the pipeline, or is that like a one and done story?
No, it's I actually just released the cover for the second one today. That's mostly done. The artist, I don't know, maybe this will translate well through phone. I can show you the painting for it.
Hey, you know what? If you want to like send that to me too, I can just like put it into the video too eventually.
Sure.
That's fucking awesome.
And so the title for that one's For a Few Souls More.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
And I always plan for the whole thing to be a trilogy, so I actually just started on that third one this week, which has a better title now than it did, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, when your husband is writing about this like despicable character who's just like mutilating other people and just doing horrible things, right? Do you enjoy that kind of stuff as well, or like do you find yourself like tempering what he's writing?
I'm not super into extreme horror usually, but
yeah,
I do edit it, or at least I provide comments where I think, hey, this is how I think that this could come across better. He takes it.
Yeah, I take it later. It's more of her saying he's being too super special again. Tone him down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a lot of experience with like extreme horror literature. I've obviously like seen some pretty graphic horror movies, but like the MAGPIE Coffin was one of the most brutal books I've read. And I know there's like a whole genre, just Death's Head Press has the splatter Western, right? Like when you're writing this kind of fiction where it is like, he's just like, getting revenge and just like kind of doing horrible things. Is your mindset like you're sitting there saying like, okay, I want to write something that's going to like make people uncomfortable. I'm going to write something that like bothers people, or is it just like you're just going by what the character's thinking and that dictates it?
I mean, I don't want to, as you've told me several times, never do something for shock value, do something for effect. So what you can get something that's really makes you queasy or something, but then you also have the stuff that makes you think longer. And that's why I would prefer over just the like gore, is the like a death so horrible that you think about it for a while. And that doesn't necessarily have to be that gory, just disturbing is a better word for it.
Yeah.
But I always viewed Salem as kind of, he's got this very base morality of it's very dispassionate, almost like a wild animal. It can walk past you or it can attack you, and you don't really know until he's made that decision.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, in that book, and then also in Dust Bowl Children, there is this like, focus on the supernatural, and there's that blending of like the Western and the supernatural, right? Or the like the kind of rustic times and the supernatural. And I feel like I haven't really seen that in horror films as much recently. Like there's that Jonah Hex movie, and that's kind of based on comics. And then I was thinking of like the Pale Door, that's right. Right, like that's kind of like where you have witches and there's cowboys and stuff. Is this kind of genre like a genre that's been around for like a long time? Are there tons of entries besides like the Death's Head Press stuff?
Well, considering that splatter westerns are, that term that we're witnessing the birth of a new subgenre of, because you have Weird West and you have horror westerns, and so what's a splatter western? What makes that different than the other two? Because to me, when I sat down and wrote Magpie, I had this ethos in my head of this cannot just be a horror story set in the West. This has to be a horror Western with an emphasis on that. How can you take all those John Wayne movies and make them, just utterly disturbing?
Right.
And how can you be transgressive with it? What boundaries can you push? Weird Western, I guess it falls under a subgenre of that because Weird Western encompasses horror, encompasses science fiction, all kinds of stuff. And then horror Westerns are, where I'm trying to think of Burrowers, the movie is a good example. You have a bunch of cowboys fighting monsters that burrow underground. Tremors 4 is another good one, but those aren't necessarily Westerns. They're horror stories set in the West, in the Old West. So splatter Western to me is you're taking the outgrowth of the splatterpunk subgenre, this transgressive attitude with the shock, with the shock and disturbing values of that, and blending it with what your parents used to watch on Saturday.
Right. I mean, I love it. Honestly, I went to the Ghoulish Book Festival a couple months ago, and they had people from Death's Head Press there, and I just decided to buy a bunch of Death's Head Press books, and I hadn't bought yours yet, but once I read yours, I was like, shit, I got to go around and read the rest of these. Like it's just so good. Like I'm not even that big of a Western guy, and I loved both of your books. Emily, like, is that like a genre that you really embrace too? Like, do you like reading the splatter Western books as well?
I mean, obviously, I read his and a couple of them.
Yeah.
You read Kinsey's and you read Mike Innenbach's.
Mm-hmm.
So
I haven't read them all, but I do enjoy them.
Yeah.
I grew up watching Westerns like he did.
We came from two different backgrounds though, because my dad he likes John Wayne, but he was not a John Wayne Western guy. I grew up on Clint Eastwood Westerns, and she grew up on John Wayne
kid.
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. Yeah. My wife, who like I wish I could collaborate with, but we don't really see eye to eye with our genres. She wouldn't say I'm much of a Western guy. Like I actually haven't even seen Unforgiven, so I don't know if that might be a little embarrassing. I've definitely seen Tombstone, but I was wondering. There's that movie that came out with, and this is totally like I just pulled this out of my ass, but like that movie that Kurt Russell was in, that was a Western that came
Bone Tomahawk.
Yeah. Is that considered like a splatter Western?
I would say it would be. It's skirting around that edge of horror Western, but that's like proto splatter Western because it came out before that even birthed it. But there's other like movies that go back even further, what that I would consider a splatter Western. High Plains Drifter, if you've ever watched that. That's incredibly, like, you have this Clint Eastwood character come to town. He may or may not be a ghost, and they let him do whatever he wants. Like he rapes a woman within like 5 minutes of getting there in the movie, and it's horrible. He's a horrible character. Makes them repaint the town red and rename it Hell. So, they just give him run of this town, and I was like, that's a splatter Western, and that came out in 1973.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. See, I got books to read and I have movies to watch now, but just talking to y'all. Well, with the horror element that's in both of your books that, we're discussing here tonight, like there seems to be like a definite, influence of specific mythologies, right? Like, did you do research or like you kind of making it out of your own mythology?
Kind of. Dust Bowl Children, honestly. So you've read it now, right?
Yeah.
It's a retelling of Hansel and Gretel.
Right.
in the Dust Bowl. And so we did lots of research on like medieval views of witches and things like that, and how those came around. What were the signs? Those kind of things. And and then we just kind of developed our own little mythology from there. Like take these legends, grind them down, and then spit something out with that.
Yeah. And then for Magpie Coffin, was that like based on a certain kind of belief too, or religion?
For me, not really as much as just I really enjoy. One of my ground rules when I wrote is there's no inhuman monsters. They all have to be human at their base level. There's some magic, but it really is kind of pushed to the boundaries. It happens, but it's not the central point of the story, and that mythology is just kind of developed over time. Because when I first wrote that, I was like, I have this bare bones backstory for Salem, and now I have this whole elaborate Google Doc that has his entire life story, and it's like, well, this happened here, this happened there, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I just loved your book, and I just like blew through it for the Magpie Coffin, and it was narrated by Sean Druigar, right? That's how you say his last name.
Yeah.
And I think he just did a fantastic job as Salem Covington.
He did.
He's from ENCYCLOPOCALYPSE. Is that what brought you over to the ENCYCLOPOCALYPSE?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, we have a book. I'd appreciate it if y'all checked it out." And Sean and I have a good working relationship. He's like, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to take a look at it." And he did. He liked it, and he was like, "We'd love to put it out." So here we are.
Are there plans for an audiobook of Dust Bowl Children?
There are. The narrators are almost done with it last time I checked. So because Sean got a male narrator and a female narrator for both parts.
Yeah, I figured that would happen. Yeah. So when you have a book narrated, because he did such a good job, like I kind of think that's like Salem Covington's voice when he's talking. Do you give any kind of notes, or is it just that the narrator takes your book and puts their spin on it?
Oh no, Sean asked for my input quite a lot. He'd asked me. Sean actually knows, besides Emily, probably knows more about Salem than anybody else because he has access to information. I gave him that Google Doc, and I was like, "Here you go. This might influence your performance. Knowing his backstory and where he came from, you can put inflections on things, that kind of thing." So he knows almost as much as M does.
That's awesome. Yeah. I know that y'all worked on Clickers, right? The Clickers Forever is the one that
Clickers
y'all
Never
did,
Die.
Right? Oh, Clickers Never Die. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Now we both had stories in Clickers Forever. So.
Okay. Yeah. And see, like, I don't know anything about Clickers, but I know that like Brian Keene and some other horror writers like created that like franchise, right?
Hey, J.F. Gonzalez created that franchise, him and Mark Williams.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's like a whole great story. I grew up reading those. I loved those novels. And Jesus wrote it with Mark Williams, and Mark Williams died right after the first book came out. Oh. And so then he was like, "I want to continue this. Brian, do you want to write this with me?" And so Brian wrote Clickers 2, Clickers 3, Clickers versus Zombies with Jesus. And then, as you probably know, Jesus unfortunately died.
Right.
Well, then Jesus' widow decided that she wanted to continue the franchise, and Brian was like, "I don't want to write another one without Jesus. So what we'll do is we'll get this new generation of writers, new writing teams. We'll do a couple books, and we'll see how that goes." And so he tapped me and Kaz to do the first two, or the first one. Sorry.
Yeah. And so like, what is that franchise about? Like, are they like essentially aliens, and like there's different variations of them?
Prehistoric lobster monsters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So basically, there's this in the first one. There's a hurricane that's and it drives all these clickers up from the depths onto land or whatever. And they're a mixture between a lobster and a scorpion. So when they sting you, they inject you with this venom that causes you to like bloat and explode, but melt, and they just like eat up the gooey innards. It's a pure creature feature. It's great. And then there's a big twist about that. You find out that they're not actually coming up on land to invade. They're actually running away from something worse.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah, that's and so awesome. Then it goes from there. And so In the second one, they introduced giant clickers, ones that are like the size of cars, buildings, that kind of thing. And then the third one, Brian introduced the obsidian clickers, which spray the venom out of their tails from like acid, defoliant kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so then clickers never die. We came up with the we call them the albino or the white clickers, the Japanese, the kamikaze clickers is what we call them. They explode and melt everything because they're genetically engineered by the Japanese army in World War II. It's great.
Man, I need to get into that franchise, man. I've always been intrigued. The cover art is always so awesome. I'm like, I gotta read that, and like so many people are connected to it too. Like, with your other novel, because you also wrote Catfish in the Cradle too, right?
Yeah.
Is that like a historical story as well, or historical fiction?
No. It kind of reads like it's rural fiction for sure. The main character, he's a swamp guy. Like, you ever watch that Swamp People show? He's basically that. So
yeah.
But it's modern day because that's like all from my childhood, is that area, that kind of thing. So
is it set in the area where you grew up?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And where are you from originally? I'm sorry.
I'm from a small town called Atlanta, Texas, but my family has a lake house on this very small town called Uncertain, Texas, that where I spent a lot of my time growing up. So that's where that's set.
But I think it's awesome that you guys collaborate together and work as a writing duo, and that Emily, that you edit Wiley's books as well, because that's just so cool. Like my wife writes a little bit. I try to write too, and I just think that would be just like this awesome situation, just to have that going.
What's the meanest thing you've ever critically put in one of my side notes?
I don't know. That's subjective. You'd have to tell them.
Does it ever lead to actual arguing between y'all?
Sometimes.
Not real ones.
Not real arguments, but it's like, I want this, and she's like, that is stupid.
Yeah. What's the main point of contention that usually it's like, oh man, this is the thing we always butt heads about?
Redundant words.
Redundant.
He has specific words he loves.
Oh, okay.
She's like, you've used this word for this is the 25th time in this manuscript. Please get rid of
the
it.
word meat.
Yeah, meat, MEAT. It's they became meat or whatever like that. Yeah, nothing but it's just like, if I have to, or mixed.
Mixed, yeah.
Yeah, mixed is another one. I'm tired. And then what was it when I was writing For a Few Souls More? She was like, oh, for the love of God, just say red. You can say anything else but red.
Oh, yeah, you were like mulberry, crimson.
Maroon. It's like, just use the word red. But,
well, Emily, is there a book in particular that you enjoy the most that you've edited of Wiley's? Yeah.
Souls, I think, is his best work to date. So that'll be cool when that comes out.
The Magpie sequel.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He did
Is the next collaboration that you guys are working on, is that coming out from ENCYCLOPOCALYPSE too, or a different?
We're not finished with it, so it doesn't have a home yet.
But I gotcha.
It fell under the same formula that we came up with Dust Bowl Children for, because this is what I love about working with her, is that we have a process that we really enjoy. We take it has to be some sort of historical event. The Dust Bowl, for example. The next one is the Yukon Gold Rush.
Oh, cool.
And then it has to be influenced or inspired by a song from one of our favorite bands. Last time it was Alison Krauss. This time it was what was it? Florence and the Machine. Florence and the Machine.
Oh, okay.
And then it has to be based on a fairy tale retelling. So
yeah.
And all three of those go together, and it makes the story.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I was actually surprised at how long the book was too, because Magpie Coffin was pretty brief. Is Dust Bowl Children your longest piece?
I mean, I think Clickers Never Die is my longest piece
yeah, probably.
Yeah, Dust Bowl Children is about 10,000 words shorter, I think.
Isn't it 95,000?
95, and Clickers is actually it might be about the same length.
Maybe it is. It was 100. We shaved it down.
Yeah, but it is one of the longer ones. It was more wasn't supposed to be extreme as much as they were just extreme moments. So it doesn't need to be short, sweet, and to the point. It just has to be, to be savored.
We had an outline for it, but we sort of ran over it, so it got longer.
Oh, okay. Well, so that is also the question that gets asked all the time to writers, right? Are you a pantser? Are you a planner? Like, do you write extensive outlines for books?
The ones we've done together, but he's a pantser by nature.
Yep, I'm a pantser by nature.
Yeah.
Someone's saw somebody on Twitter. It's like, I feel like your books were just made up on the fly. I'm like, dude, I hate to tell you. But,
yeah. So like Magpie Coffin's totally just made up on the fly?
Magpie was, yeah. Souls had more of an outline to it, but it's still, the outline got ran over about halfway through.
Yeah.
I never outline stuff as much as I have a starting point, an ending point, and then I just fill in the middle.
Well, I mean, that's the one thing about Dust Bowl Children, right? Is that you go from each perspective and you go back and forth, and it's in like chronological order. Was it essentially that like you would have to finish the Cal section, Wiley, and then you would have to do the not the Emily section, the Abigail section?
Yeah. That was definitely that. This was a little bit easier one for us because we had 2 viewpoint characters, and just go from there. The one we're working on right now is quite different because we're writing the same characters. There's no just viewpoint that we alone take. So it's
harder.
It's harder.
Yeah. Because you have to like have the same voice essentially for a character, but 2 people are writing it. Yeah, I could see that being a big challenge. Yeah. Do you find yourselves like kind of correcting like, oh no, they wouldn't say that? Does that happen a lot?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Or this subplot is not great. Let's take that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to Stephen Kozanowski too, like he would make these YouTube videos where he'd talk about writing and publishing, and you were on one of them, right?
Yeah. Kaz is a really, really, really good friend. We're outlining our 3rd collaboration right now. What you were talking about, the hematophages, is quite coincidental.
Oh, okay. Oh, very cool. Well, I mean, that's honestly how I heard about you, was from the YouTube video that you were on with him. And then I followed you on Twitter. And then when I heard about your book, I was like, oh shit, I want to, read Dust Bowl Children and see if you guys wanted to be interviewed too. So I'm glad it all worked out.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like I said, Kaz is a great writer. I love hematophages. That's his best thing I've read from him to date.
Yeah.
Especially Clickers, in comparison. There was another writer on Clickers. I won't name him, but he was pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, so it sounds like you got a lot of things, in the pipeline and stuff. Once we get kind of to the end of the video, I just always have the writers like plug what's coming out. If people are brand new to your work, like where can they find your work, and like, what should they be looking for?
Mm-hmm. All right. So my stuff is available online at Amazon.com. So you just go look up my name, Wile E Young. It's just like the coyote with Young at the end, and it's all there. And I don't have anything out of print, so it all should be available.
Nice. Yeah. And then on Twitter they can find you too.
Yep. My Twitter handle is at Texas Cthulhu. So.
Oh yeah, I was always wondering about that too. Like, what's the significance behind that?
Because originally my brand I was trying to make for myself was Kentucky Fried Cthulhu.
Oh.
was what I called it, and then I just switched into naming myself after a Looney Tune, and here we are.
Awesome. Yeah. Go ahead.
And I was about to say, so what's coming out is For a Few Souls More, which is the sequel to the Magpie Coffin that covers about close to being done, and then it goes into production, get it formatted. It's already edited, so that's not a big deal. I'd say look forward to the next, if I had to estimate, 2 months.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Dang. Nice. Yeah. And then y'all's next collaboration, you're still working on it, and then that's kind of still down the road.
That's still down the road. I've got 3 other projects besides that. I'm doing a collaboration with Lucas Mangum. I've got a solo novel, which is my primary novel right now that I'm writing for Clash, and it's my apocalypse novel, which I'm really excited about. Now I've got one from Madness Heart Press that I'm working on, which is further along than others, and it's my coming of age story that I've never written. So we'll see how it goes.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Yeah. Emily, as his editor, which of those projects are you most excited about?
Probably Man Up, just so I can get it finished finally.
Yeah, so he'll stop talking about it.
So I'll stop talking about it.
Well, I was going to say, you know, you were talking about an apocalyptic novel, and I was thinking before about your historical fiction and the Dust Bowl and Westerns. It kind of seems like it would be kind of easy to write an apocalyptic fiction, since that kind of time period can seem like what a lot of our apocalyptic fiction is these days, you know? And it's almost like a wheel, right? Where it's like, you know, we've kind of progressed, and it seems like we could essentially go back to that.
Right.
Do you find it's easy to write like an apocalyptic story based on your history knowledge?
The situation, no. The character, yes. The main character is of a very different life experience than I've ever had, and I want to make sure I get that exactly right and am sensitive to this particular group of people.
Oh, okay.
So I actually wrote a whole first draft of it that I scrapped and started all over from the front, from the beginning, and so that I could get it, because I was like, I did not capture this in any way, shape, or form. So I went and did some research, did some interviews, and, you know, I just have to get this character exactly right.
Yeah. Wow. How many pages did you scrap?
More than I care to name right now.
Man.
It was enough where it's been, like I told you, I'm like, babe, I am nearly 40,000 words into this, and we're not off of night one yet.
Oh my God. Wow.
So I'm like, that is not what they're looking for. You know, I don't want this to turn into like The Stand or some other door stopper that's, you know, yay high.
Right.
So
Right.
I was like, we're going to go back and scrap this, come up with a more streamlined and better, more, I don't know, not charismatic's the word, but less problematic, I'd say. Because, like I said, want to capture this life experience correctly.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, as a pantser, right? Like, how many times do you have to, like, how many drafts do you have to go through for your novels?
Like one. This is the first. That Apocalypse novel is the first one that I've ever gone back after
the well one.
The well one.
Yeah. WELL.
Okay. That's what the Waters gave us. That Madness Heart one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I did go back on that one too, but it's these two novels that are giving me the problems. Going back and making sure. But Magpie was one draft. Souls was 1.5 drafts.
Yeah, the whole last half was different.
Yeah, For a Few Souls More was like 100,000, a little over 100,000 words, and we trimmed that down to about 70. So a lot of that got taken out of that first draft. And then Catfish, my first novel, it needed a second draft, and hopefully I can go back and fix a lot of that someday.
Right.
And anything co-written is 2 drafts at least. With me and Kosnewski, it was 2 drafts. Dust Bowl, we did
one with lots and lots of editing.
One with lots and lots of editing, and Shades of the Black Stone, my novella, that one only had 1 draft. So,
okay. So, how does your editing process work? Like, do you essentially like whatever you wrote in that day? Do you pass on to Emily and then she looks at it, or is it like you have to get to a certain, like you have to finish a chapter and then you pass it on to her?
She probably wishes it was like that. It's more of I finish the entire thing and then she reads it.
Oh.
Yeah,
but if you're doing one draft and she's editing it, that's actually really great, right? Because it's like you've gotten that one draft out, and then I guess, Emily, you come in and just like really go to town on that one draft, right?
I leave lots of comments.
That is awesome.
The best comment she's ever left me was, this sentence is a bigger train wreck than the train wreck in this story. Please get rid of it.
That is awesome.
I'm not that mean in real life.
No, she's not mean in real life. She's just very. It's kind of like on SNL when they read the mean tweets. That's kind of how it was. The mean critical comments.
You like it.
Awesome.
I'm like, oh, I finished novel. Time to get my mean critiques.
Oh man. Do y'all go out to celebrate once it's all done? Do you go like out to dinner together, or what do y'all do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we get hibachi every time.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
We should probably do it more often than we do.
Yeah. To be fair, we don't finish novels that often. So you say.
That is awesome. Yeah, well, I mean, I really appreciate y'all talking to me tonight, and you guys just seem so, happy, and it's awesome you guys are working together like that. You kind of inspire me. I want to go reach out to my wife, see if she'll work on something with me. But
it's one of those things. I think not that it brought us closer together per se, but it's one of those things. You have it's just something fun that y'all can do together. Most people do puzzles.
Right. Or watch The Bachelorette or something, right?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if you'd ever want to be back on the show, but I would love to have Danny come on too and talk to y'all. And like maybe when your next collaboration comes out, he could have listened to this one on audiobook and he could listen to Magpie Coffin. I don't know if you ever would want to come back.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have it. Thank you for having us this time.
Yeah, appreciate it. I will put a link to your Amazon page in the description for this video, and I'll also put a link to your Twitter account too.
Please do. I would really appreciate it. And
Awesome.
for all the fans who end up watching this, if you get the book, thank you for getting it, and please drop a review when you're done, good or bad. We appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. I am definitely down for reading more of your work, so thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.